Good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual But Not Religious Show. I'm your host, George Lewis. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I've got a especially good guest this evening. And my next week guest is Ken Seeley. Ken is the creator of the A&E cable show Intervention. A really neat guy, very creative guy, and the work he's doing is helping a ton of people. He has a new venue now called Intervention 911, and we'll be talking to Ken next week. My guest this week is Sheila Applegate. Sheila is a seer and a channeler, and she's really worldwide well known. Just was in England channeling there in the English countryside, and I want to tell you a little bit about Spiritual Broadcasting Network, why we're here, what we're doing about the Spiritual But Not Religious show, and what our intent here is. One of the things that I've began to be aware of was that for people like myself who are spiritual but not religious, I don't go to a church per se. Occasionally I will. I don't belong to any particular belief system, and I also believe that we don't need a mediator to find our way to God, that God exists within and us within God. But because we don't go to churches, there's really no gathering place for us, no real meeting place for people who are spiritual but not religious. And so the intent here is to bring you the many varied voices, and it's very diverse, as we have a super diverse group of people and belief systems. And I think it's imperative on our future and the future of humanity that we begin to really enjoy our diversity rather than finding that to be a problem and causing conflict. So we'll be bringing you the many, many voices of that spiritual community as we move forward. We have several new shows on tap that you can tune into. We have Tales of Inspiration on Tuesday night, just prior to this show, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Johnny Calloway and Tales of Inspiration. Johnny is a superb storyteller. Johnny comes out of Kentucky and was trained by the storytellers in the country stores there, who are some of the best in the world. So you want to be sure and tune in, maybe make Tuesday night an evening of watching spiritual content. Tom, how we doing? We got Sheila on. Give me just a second. I don't have my earphones in here, and if I'm going to hear Sheila, I'm going to excuse me just a second. I'm going to have to do that. Not sure where I've been tonight, Tom.
Well, you're here.
I just spent 10 days up in Michigan with my daughter who had surgery, and with my daughter's daughter who got married while I was up there. And so I'm not quite back in gear here as far as what I'm doing, so I apologize for not being quite ready. All right, we got Sheila on the line?
We do.
Great. Good evening, Sheila. Have I got you there?
Oh, yes.
Good. Hi there. Gee, I've been looking forward to this. We've been communicating for months now via email. First time we've talked, though.
Yes, it's wonderful to actually hear your voice.
Sheila actually writes for our newsletter, and she just does a spectacular job with it. And I enjoy I enjoy very much, Sheila, what you have written. I like your style and how easy what you write is to read. You also do a radio show, am I right? An internet radio show?
I do. Co-Creator Network.
Co-Creator Network. You want to give that whole address?
Sure. www.co-creatornetwork.com. And we go live on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
Great. And I really would recommend that you catch that show. So, Sheila, what I think I'd like to do is start out by having you give our viewers an idea of who you are and what you do, so that so our conversation will be a little more engaging for them and a little more compelling. Why don't you give us a quick bio of Sheila Applegate and like where you came from and how you came to be a seer and a channeler.
Sure. Well, I'm in Central New York, and I actually started my career out as a clinical social worker, which gave me a wonderful foundation. I was a child and family therapist, so that sort of springboarded me in. I was always very passionate about spirituality and my own journey to spirit and wanting to incorporate that into my work. About 10 years ago, I had already studied metaphysical studies and opened up to be able to communicate with spirit guides and to do some healing work. And so it came to a point where it felt like doing the therapy for me, I was sitting on my hands because I knew that there were more things that I could do to help people release. And
right.
Sometimes we can talk things out as much as we want, but there's other energies that are needed to actually let go and release. So approximately 10 years ago, I left the mainstream work. I say mainstream, but I actually was working with the Native Americans in my community.
Oh, really?
Right before I left. So It wasn't completely a mainstream situation. I was able to do a lot of spiritual work in that position. But since then, I've been doing individual readings for people across the world via phone and Skype and in person, and I'm able to communicate with people's spirit guides and loved ones who've crossed over. I'm also very passionate about teaching people to do this on their own. I
Right.
believe everybody can communicate with the spirit world, and it's our natural way of being. So I'm very passionate about helping people through what I use as guided meditations, because that is the process that worked for me and allowed me to begin to communicate with the spirit world. So I teach a lot of guided meditations. I have a lot of free meditations on my website, and really encourage people to take their own journey, however that is, to be able to bring spirituality into their daily life.
So you use guided meditations to help them to channel or to contact their spirit guides and so forth? Is that what we're talking?
Yes, actually, everything I do when I teach and through the guided meditations is helping people to communicate with their guides. I don't actually promote it as that. It's just part of our own spiritual journey. But in
Right.
every class that I teach and every meditation I do, I guide people into usually the sacred garden, which is really an inner reflection of ourselves. And it's a way for us to go journey inward and learn how to see and hear our spirit guides in the inner realm, which I tell people when I'm leading through a meditation to receive it as if you were a child being read a bedtime story by someone that you love, and just let your imagination go, because with time that will expand itself. The imagination is the gateway into the spirit world, and so if you just allow yourself to go, then it will prove itself with time.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, and the channeling interests me very much. I've channeled quite a bit with writing. I haven't really. When you channel, do you speak in their voice, or you just make a connection, or how does that work?
Well, and I love that you say you channel in writing, because I believe so many people channel in this world, and we just don't give them that word.
Right, absolutely.
Musicians channel, artists channel, authors channel. We're channeling all the time, and so to realize that that's just normal is so important. So when I'm speaking of channeling, there's different levels that I'm speaking of. And the first level, I like to use the expression of a television. And so a television is sitting in your living room, and it's hooked up to the cable, so there's thousands of television shows going through the airwaves at any moment. Whether you turn the television on, no matter what channel you turn to, it doesn't stop those other energies from moving through that airwave. So the first level of channeling that I refer to would be just turning on the television and choosing what station you want to listen to in your own world, in your own vibration. So opening ourselves up and letting the energy flow through us, letting our higher self flow through us. A lot of that's what artists and authors will do. in their work, and they know that it comes from something more than their personality. And so there's that level when I'm speaking.
Right.
And then there's a level where I expand myself further, and then I see and hear the spirit world. That's the channel I'm turning myself onto, and I can see and hear loved ones who've crossed over, ascended masters, and angelic hosts, and I simply relay what I'm seeing.
Right.
And then if I expand myself further, then I allow certain beings that I know and trust to completely come in and use me as a vessel in order to speak in the first person.
When you say that you expand yourself further, are we talking about? Explain that to us so that we.
I've just recently been using the word expand. It is a level of surrender, but it's in the knowing that we are all one. And so even when I'm allowing these personalities to come through me, of these ascended masters who have taught us in the past and are here to teach us now, it's still part of the oneness. So when I say expand, I'm talking about sort of expanding my attention from my personal I into the more universal, and being able to then draw out the energies that can teach in that moment.
So what is the trick? And I'm sure people who are trying this in the beginning, I don't know if trick's the right word. What is the method or the technique that you use in order to be able to marry intent with letting go? Mm-hmm. Because you have to have that.
I say I'm a surrendered control freak. So I struggled all along the way to let go of control. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, because I needed to know every step of the way. I say I'm a skeptic. I questioned everything. And it was a personal journey to surrendering. And this is why I teach you start with yourself. You know, you go into your garden, your meditation, or whatever technique you use to start to access your own information, your own guides for your own personal use. And then we know the technique, and we can then go quicker. I don't have to go into my garden now. I can just say an opening prayer, and the guides know, it's an agreement that now I'm going to work with them. And the cleansing of ourselves, the personal work, is what allows me to be the vessel for them to use, in my opinion. So it's my responsibility to deal with my emotions, to face my obstacles, to become the clearest vessel that I can, so that the energies can work through me.
And I'm planning to talk a little more about that as we move in, because I'm with you. I think without the personal work, we can just cause a lot of havoc and a lot of trouble. That not only for others, but for ourselves.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the radio waves and the TV waves and how there are different channels and different levels, that same premise, that same thing works in the law of attraction. It's like if I'm vibrating one particular way, I can see somebody who I've had an altercation with or whatever. They'll be across the street, but we won't cross paths, because I've moved, from that space. So I want to get more in depth with the channeling and who you channel with and the entities, and but I got a couple other things I want to talk about. First of all, you just were at the UN and presented a petition at the UN. How about telling us?
That got canceled.
Oh.
I was scheduled to go, but we canceled that at the last minute.
What was the plan with that? What was the petition going to deal with?
Co-Creator Network was working. It was about oneness and bringing all the people together. The idea that we can work together on a bigger whole, so that oneness, as I speak of it, is in the spirit realm. Of course, we're all one, but even on the earth level, if we start, instead of everybody inventing the wheel, there's a lot of people now that are doing a lot of work in good ways in all the whole spectrum of businesses and spiritual teachers, and so to bring everyone, businesses together, everyone together that believes in the concept of coming together and working as one in a global unit.
That's one of the, I believe, humanity's largest challenges is to come to that point. And certainly that's a big part of why we exist, why Spiritual Broadcasting Network exists, why this show exists, because I'm totally in alignment with you. If we don't make some pretty serious changes, I just read something the other day. We talk about saving the Earth. The reality is we need to save humanity because Earth is going to take care of itself.
Absolutely. She knows what she's doing.
You bet. And is far more intelligent and aware than what we're willing to talk about. You channel Mary Magdalene and Isis, which is a pretty interesting combination. How did that happen? How did that occur for you?
Well, I'll tell you the story.
Okay, great.
Originally, I started working with Mary Magdalene, and just like most of the world, I was not raised to know much about Mary Magdalene.
Right.
I was raised Protestant, so there might have been a little bit more openness to that than what some of the other people have learned. But, in my early childhood, I say Jesus Christ Superstar was probably my first expression of, maybe there's something here with this woman. And so she really wasn't in the forefront of my knowing as I was growing up. And
right.
Several years ago, I was experiencing a lot of things in my life. I had begun the change of form of my marriage. My best friend had just crossed to the spirit world through cancer. I was in a very intense relationship of exploring the twin flame vibration and trying to understand all of that. And one day I was just on my couch. Now at this point I already was communicating with spirit guides in meditation and in some readings, but I was not in a meditation at this time. Just sitting on my couch relaxing, and I began to see an image of Magdalene in front of me. So I took great notice, even more so than had it been in my normal experience of the meditation.
When you say image, were you seeing an animated life, or just an image like a photo type image?
I try to think back on exactly how that was because I get asked that question a lot. And
I'll bet, yeah.
I would say probably the best way to describe it would be like a hologram.
I gotcha.
In between physical and spiritual.
Right.
But my physical eyes were open in this case, where in meditation they're often closed. So I was seeing probably with my physical and my third eye at the same time.
Right.
And so she began to explain to me that she was Jesus' twin flame, and that their partnership was part of the lessons that they had come to teach the world. And at that point, she placed her hands on my heart, and I felt such tremendous love from her. It just poured through me. And she said to me at that point, these next few years are going to be very difficult for you, but I will be by your side. And I think there was a moment of saying, what do you mean very difficult? I've just been through all of these things. Oh, I had just come out of a near-death illness as well. So it was an intense year telling me this is going to be a difficult couple of years. But she said she would be by my side. So she did, and she ended up being my personal guide. She was with me, guiding me along the way. And we became close in my garden, in meditations, and all of that. I began to get to know her more and more. And after a while, she said, and I was teaching classes at that point, where I would bring the messages forth, I would see and hear, and I would translate that to people. And then one day she said to me, would you be willing to let me use you as a vessel so I can speak in the first person? And I said, thank you, but no.
Right. Nobody's going to control me, right?
That seemed a little bit, and like I said, I've been a control freak, and so I said thank you, but no, and she smiled at me. She placed her hands on me again, and the next class was my debut, and we've been doing that ever since.
What year was that?
I started working with her. My voice would change, and you could hear a pretty strong difference when she would come in. With time, and my philosophy of what happened is that as I did more of my work, our vibrations became more similar to each other. So now when I let her speak through me, there's only a very subtle difference in our voices.
Are you able to contact her at will, or is that so? At any point, at any time that you're able to, are you able to do that on your radio show or on an internet television show such as this one?
I am.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's very interesting. Tom and I have been talking about you and about the possibility that you might be interested in doing a show on Spiritual Broadcasting Network. We'd like to talk with you about that further somewhere in the next few days. I think it would be a really interesting show and very helpful to to an awful lot of people. And you teach people how to channel and how to contact their particular personal guide. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about Isis. How does Isis play in this? There's, if I recall, there's some talk or some understanding that Isis and Magdalene are one and the same, or are they distinctly different?
Well, when we're talking about being in the oneness,
yes,
then we are in the same, and they're both coming through the omega vibration.
Uh-huh.
I do see them as different personalities, and the way it has been shown, the way they show it to me. And again, when we're human, we're trying our best to interpret this, and it's really not interpretable on our level.
I understand.
The way that I understand it through the way they communicate with me is that Isis was actually Magdalene's spirit guide when Magdalene was alive.
Okay.
So that Magdalene studied under Isis. Isis guided her, and in some way, in our return to the oneness, they are very similar. They're of the same lineage, but they are different personalities, and they do have different personalities. I can vouch for that.
Absolutely different personalities, huh?
Yeah.
Both
very loving, but Isis is very strong in her words, and Magdalene very gentle.
So Isis is really kind of like the real powerful matriarch.
That's how I see it. Yes.
Right. Well, I think I've felt that about Isis, and what I've read and what I know about Isis, that it was a whole different time.
Yes.
Yeah, a whole different time. So I know that we have some folks out there who don't understand channeling, don't have any idea of what spirit guides are, don't know what the angelic realm is, and so forth. Let's kind of go through that step by step and help these folks to to understand. It seems to me that one of the, and I'd like to talk about this also, one of the major things for me in the channeling that I did, and it was conscious channeling, was the trust issue. I even hit a point where I just walked away and didn't want to, I didn't want any more of it. And it's like, so how do you come to, first of all, to know, whether we're talking with an angel, with a spirit guide, with an ascended master? Give us a little breakdown on all of that, if you would.
Okay. First of all, trust is a very important thing, and that's why I'm so passionate about helping people to learn how to control their third eye.
Right.
And what I mean by that is we have control over our physical eyes. If we didn't have a choice of what we looked at, when we opened them, when we closed them, life would be chaotic. And so if we approach the third eye with that same neglect, life is chaotic.
Right.
We need to be able to control our third eye in the same way we control our physical eyes. We need to choose what we look at. We need to know when we want them open, when we want them closed, how much we want to see, and how much we don't want to see.
Uh-huh.
So every time I do a guided meditation, I take the people into the garden, and there's a gate. And when they open their gate, they're opening their third eye. When they're closing the gate, they're closing the third eye. So one of the very first things is learning to be able to open and close that at will, to use it as you desire. Because when we're seeing spirits around in our daily life, that's interfering with being human. We need to know.
Right.
We need to open and close. And it's eavesdropping. I would never look at somebody and eavesdrop on them spiritually with my third eye. Just because I'm capable of it doesn't give me a right to do that if they haven't asked me to.
That's very interesting, and I think very important. We talk with a lot of psychics and so forth, and a lot of damage can be done by that kind of invasion of privacy, in my opinion.
I call them drive-bys. If somebody comes by and gives me a reading that I haven't asked for, it's a drive-by.
Right. And I think we go to spiritualist churches, they tend to respect that same thing when they'll ask you if you want a reading.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was trained in a spiritual church. So
were you? Okay, great.
Yeah. So that's probably part of where I get it.
Right.
Again, and some people will say, well, I just get my vision is so powerful I can't control it. And I say, well, no. That's the ego speaking. If you can't control it, you have no business using it. So learn how to control it.
Right.
So that is one of my big pet peeves, and one of the things that I'm always teaching people, even if I don't tell them I'm teaching it, in everything I do, that is where they're learning that discipline.
Right.
So then when I work,
So what is a spirit guide?
Spirit guide. And of course, we're always getting into somatics, and people use the terms differently. But for me, when I refer to spirit guides, I refer to the angelic realm, which I'll explain, and ascended masters.
So it's a combination of both of these, and they're different.
That's how I refer to spirit guides.
Okay.
And the spirit guides, go ahead. In their truest form, they are energy, love, light, color, but they will come in a form that's most appropriate for us at this time. So when we're working with a spirit guide, they may look like an animal, they may look like an angel, they may look like a person, or they may just come looking like color or light or energy, whatever is going to be most helpful to us in this moment. So the angelic realm, in my understanding, and every religion has a name for them, is they have a different evolution than us. They are not human. They are evolving in a different process. They are here to guide us.
And they've never been human.
They've never been human.
Okay.
So they're not necessarily as good with time and space. They understand emotions as well. So if somebody is struggling in a lot of pain, but they know it's in their highest good, they'll still be happy because they don't understand the depth. Although they have compassion, they haven't experienced that depth of emotion.
I understand.
So an ascended master would be a being who came to Earth and woke up from the dream and understood the oneness and ascended and stopped that cycle of returning and learning. And that would include the peacemaker, Jesus, Buddha, Magdalene, many others.
Right.
And more people are ascending, so there's just more and more ascended masters to work with. Again, they come in a form that's most appropriate for us. Many of them have had multiple lives before ascending, so they're going to take a form that fits the person that they're working with. And the good thing about them is that they do tend to understand emotion, but they also understand that it's an illusion, and they can guide us through. So they understand the human experience, but they also understand what's beyond that.
Right. And angels are also, so they're different.
There's a different vibration with them. Yeah.
Okay. So
they are evolving. Not too long ago, I found that they were getting much better with time. And I finally asked them, I said, why are you guys so much better? And they got the one that I asked had this beautiful smirk on her face, and she goes, we've been training with the people. So learning as they go. So they are experiencing more of the time and the emotion, too.
One of the things I know about us as humans is that we don't do anything that isn't in some way self-centered and self-serving. The difference, I think, is when we're selfish with that, as opposed to when we can be altruistic with it. And Madison Avenue knows that if they're going to sell you a product, they must deal with what's in it for me, and which makes me wonder what's in it for spirit guides. What's the reason that they're involved? That question one, and question two is, when we talk about oneness, are we connected in that oneness with them somehow or other also?
think you answered your question in your second question, because that is what's in it for them, because we are all one.
Okay.
We are all one energy when it comes. We're just simply different reflections of the same divine love. So what is good for one is good for the other. So if we are selfish as humans, when we evolve to the place of reconnecting, remembering our oneness, then our selfishness actually assists all of humanity.
Yeah, I experienced that here in this dimension, in that, when I work with others, I do it, I don't charge for it, but it's not altruistic completely. It's like there's a payoff for me. I get joy. I learn more about myself, and I deal with my own issues or feelings and emotions that I think you called it my inner. I forget the term, but that's a payoff for me. That's why I do that. I really believe we were created self-centered. I've never met anybody that's not.
That makes sense. I hadn't thought about it, but and if our highest self is God, then we should be self-centered, but just in a larger, expanded understanding of that.
Absolutely, but and it makes everything different when that happens. It's and without that self-centeredness, Sheila, we couldn't exist as a species or as an individual, at least in this plane. We'd have gotten eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or something.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and the same, I use the word, that's how I refer to the ego, but the ego is our primitive self that kept us alive as a human race long enough to get to this point of exploring our oneness. So it was perfect.
And I'm going to want to talk with you here in a little bit about the ego, because that's for many people that's a real confusing issue. The thing that's on my mind right now is one of the things that you say is that we, in order to evolve spiritually, to grow into our larger self, is that we need to disengage from old patterns that no longer serve us. Certainly, that's been the case for me. Yeah, but the thing that I wonder about is just hearing that I need to disengage from an old pattern doesn't seem to be sufficient to really bring that change about, even though I might want to change. What do you do? How does that, how do you bring about that change in your work, through your work? I know as a therapist, you must have had some kind of a methodology, but as a channeler, how does that work?
Well, that's exactly why I moved further than therapy, because knowing it doesn't change it.
No.
Energy itself does, and I think a lot of times it's what happens beyond the words. So sometimes when we go into a meditation, when I lead people into a meditation, they're taking their mind. I just said that to someone recently. Give your mind something to do. That's why the guided meditation works.
Let it entertain itself, huh?
It entertains itself, and it's like getting in the back door, because now we're not thinking about the problem, but a metaphor for it, and resolving it beyond our own internal language. The energy itself. So when I channel Magdalene or Isis, the words that they say are important. The energy that flows through is more important.
Right.
So the vibration that actually comes through me when I'm bringing forth a channel, I believe, is more important than the words. And if you look back at the day that I remember Magdalene coming to me for the first time, the things she said weren't that great, right? But
right.
The vibration of her touching me was what transformed me and kept me moving.
And so that encounter, that initial encounter, and I suspect is an ongoing thing with you, actually started this inner transformation that's ongoing today with you then.
Absolutely. I'm constantly transforming and expanding my vibration.
Right. And you also talk about the need for forgiveness, and I think that's huge in our evolution, in our personal evolution, in our spiritual growth. How do you teach someone who has a fierce resentment for an ex-partner or whatever it might be, forgiveness? I mean, how do you get them to that place?
It's a long. Well, I don't want to say it's a long process because with energy we can move faster than we imagine.
Right.
But it's a process, and honestly, the process is about learning to love yourself. Because what Magdalene showed me years ago is she loves to play with words and twist them around just a little bit to give them new meaning.
Uh-huh.
She showed me years ago that forgiveness or forgiven is actually given for us. And when we reach a point in our life where we are so happy with our life and who we are, and we love ourselves, and we're using the law of attraction to bring to us everything that is perfect in our desires, then we can look back at everything that's happened to us and truly know that it was given for us, because we love who we are so much right now that we wouldn't change a thing. And we understand then that on a soul level, everyone that we thought harmed us actually assisted us in getting to this place. But we can't fully get to that place until we love ourselves, and that is a full process, and that is something that is not done simply in meditation. It can be done to some degree in meditation, and there's so much energy to assist us, but we have to face our emotion. And I think a lot of people on the spiritual journey believe that there are good emotions and bad emotions, and if I'm going to be a spiritual person, I'm going to be peaceful, and I'm going to be gentle.
Right.
And anger is not good, fear, and they push it away. In reality, in order to truly be peace, we have to delve into those energies that we are thinking are bad or
negative, right.
They're exactly what we need to do in order to transform them. So when you've looked into the emotions, then you can see that anger becomes passion, fear becomes hope, when we actually move into them and transform them. So our job is to get down to the dirty and deal with our emotions so that we can love ourselves, love our life, create the life we want, and then give thanks to the people who helped us get there.
I think that part of our spiritual growth is one area that gets bypassed by so many different belief system, churches, what have you, and you see it played out all the time in the congregation and in the management part of the church. They'll have all kinds of conflicts going on, and people aren't working with their emotions or their feelings at all. And I believe we get victimized by our own feelings and emotions until we start looking at them, start understanding more about why we're feeling them, what our motives in the things that we're doing. And so it sounds like you must work a lot in that area with folks also.
I do, and I think that is why I was guided in the early years to do the therapy, because I got to really go deeply and explore emotions.
Right.
So now I can bring it all together and help people. And the other thing is that because I've done my own work and because I am so comfortable now with emotions, I can hold that space for other people to explore.
Absolutely.
Because when they look at me, even if they're yelling at me, they're putting me down or whatever they want to do, I'm just going to love them back. And that's what the Ascended Masters do for us. We can scream at the spirit guides all we want, and they're just going to smile and love us and be happy for us because we're actually getting our emotion out. So the more work I do for myself, the more I can hold that space for others to explore that. And the more of us that can hold that for others, the more the world can move through this quicker. So I don't think that the speed with which it has taken, the first line to get into this and understand that is the speed with which the world's going to transform. I think it's much more like a tidal wave that will just keep picking up momentum.
It seems to be that way, doesn't it? It's I look back to 35 or 40 years ago when I first started with this, and it's been picking up momentum. And I think that it's a hidden kind of a momentum, though, Sheila. I don't think it's I don't think it really has the exposure that it needs right at this point, and that's part of why we're here. So, and you made a statement in one of your writings that everything is God, and I totally believe that, which means that Hitler was God. Is that right?
does.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, people have a hard time swallowing that idea. But my experience with the emotions that you're talking about is and the changes that you refer to is, I look at when I've had a change, when I move from one place to another, and from a place of fear to a place of being more loving and more joyful. When I look at what actually changed, the only thing that changed was my viewpoint. It was how I was seeing a particular situation, and when I changed that, everything changes.
Absolutely. That's all we can change, and yet it changes everything.
It's amazing that and that is so hidden from view and so hard to believe. I think that that really plays with beginning to understand the importance of forgiveness and how we can actually get there. And just begin to see things differently. So that means also, Sheila, that our ego is God. So let's talk a little bit about ego, because we hear this all the time, about it. I think, first of all, there's a confusion with the word itself. There's the false ego, the false pride and ego, but there's also the other ego, which is the self-esteem ego, and this can cause people real conflict in understanding, what you're talking about when you're talking about ego. What does ego mean to you, and how have you dealt with your ego?
Well, my passion is to teach people to love their ego. And
right.
That confuses people because, again, there's an understanding out there right now, to some degree, that we need to overcome our ego.
Right.
And that isn't completely wrong. It's just taking it to another level of understanding. And we kind of touched on that when we talked about the selfishness, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
To me, the ego is simply the primitive part of ourself, our human being, that kept us alive and surviving. It's our primitive survival instinct.
Right.
So, so important to us, and it's done an amazing job. We would not be here as a human race if we didn't have those primitive instincts. We are not in a daily survival mode anymore.
Right.
And so as a result, we are moving through a time when we can now explore new understandings, and we can look at things differently. And so when we turn back and get upset with the ego and say, we don't want you anymore, we're turning against the part of ourselves that actually got us here, that helped us to survive. And what we need to come to understand is that we are, as a human race, here to expand and to understand. And so we can now teach the ego, first of all, gratitude. We can be grateful to that part of ourselves that kept us alive. And then we can move into a place of teaching it and telling it, okay, we have new assignment now. We are not just trying to survive now. We're in a place where we are trying to understand new concepts. And so now come along with me. I appreciate your support, and I want to know when I feel threatened. But I also want us to have some new rules here, and we're going to do this in a new way. So I embrace the ego and bring it into me and kind of get it on board with the journey. Because if we fight against anything, it's going to stop us. Because what we resist persists.
Persists, absolutely.
If it's God, we have to love it in order to remember we're one.
I spent many years in exactly that conflict you're talking about in the metaphysical world, trying to. I actually wanted to be able to get rid of my ego, to be able to just cut it out and be nothing but the calm, peaceful, wonderful, spiritual person. And I found that wasn't ever going to happen, and that what I really needed to do is exactly what you just said. I needed to be able to recognize it for what it's been and is, and be able to put my arm around it and say, okay, we're going to move forward, but we're going to do it differently. And, one of the things that I find so really interesting about your work is that it comes from experience and not just opinions. And when you say that we need to change an old pattern, you don't just say, okay, here's what you need to do with an opinion. You have had your experience because you've done that yourself, and I think that's hugely important.
Absolutely. I think that I do. I agree that is part of what makes the difference, and that I am so diligent about doing my work. And I guess in order to be able to serve more, I agreed to put a whole bunch of things in my life that may have been difficult, but I faced all of them. And again, I can turn back to all of those things now and feel complete gratitude, because it is what made me who I am, and it's what allows me to help others.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that you talked about early in the show was this ability, and I think in the book Illusions, Richard Bach talked about it also, about the ability to realize that everything that happens, good or bad, is a gift to help me to elevate and move forward in my spiritual growth. There's a saying that goes, somewhere under the horse manure there's a pony, and my job is to find it. And
absolutely,
yeah. When I start doing that, everything changes. Everything changes. Sheila, I believe that my job, as far as changing myself and as far as my purpose and what I must do, is to find myself and do everything it takes to bring me to a place of joy in my life 24/7. And that, early on, I think this may be part of why we search for that peak experience in drugs and alcohol. What we're really trying to do is find our way to that place of joy, because when I'm doing all the things that are right for me and for you, I experience joy.
Exactly, and I think you're right about that with the drugs and the alcohol. We so often want to reach that, but it's a false thing. It won't get us where we really want to go, and so it ends up becoming painful at the same time. But when we truly connect to the source, then we can feel that joy in all of our life, and that is our greatest gift that we can give to the world, to truly live in joy.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at this, all the strife and the wars and all the stuff that's going on, a lot of that conflict is about what you have that I want that I don't have, and so we're gonna fight over it. Where if we have that inner life that's taken care of, for me, it's like the material things still mean something, but they don't have nearly the meaning that they once did. You talk about unconditional love in a primary relationship. And I think that's a wonderful concept. I can't say that I've had that experience. I would like to have that experience. Do you think it's really possible?
I absolutely do. And again, I've lived it in more than one way that unfolds. And again, in order to do that, love has to be our greatest passion. We need to be willing to love beyond our ego, primitive need to feel safe.
Right.
The desire has to truly be to love the person, not to just hide with the person, but to let that love flow. And so often, especially in, you called it a primary relationship, a romantic relationship.
Right.
Whatever we're calling that, that is in some ways it's our closest way to return to God, because we can feel the one. We come so close to feeling oneness in that space, especially when we add the creation energy, the sexual energy to it, and the passion. That really truly is the closest expression of God. And we as a human race are so terrified of it that we put so many rules around it to pretend that it's safe, so we can get very similar to what you said about the drugs. It's like, let's pretend we're getting this experience without having to do the work to get it, without having to take the risks of what it takes to really live it. But when we let go of the falsity of it and we truly decide to love somebody, whatever relationship it is, whether it's our child, our friend, our lover, when we truly decide to love them as they are and let them be who they are and love ourselves, and let that form take whatever flow it needs to over time, then we are learning to love unconditionally. And sometimes loving someone unconditionally does mean giving them space.
Absolutely. Can actually even mean giving them up, am I right?
Changing the form of the relationship.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sometimes it does mean that.
So tell me, let's talk a bit about here, which almost everybody that I know is interested in, and I'd like to know the difference between the two terms, and then talk about, give us a real good understanding of these, and that is soulmates and twin flames. Are they the same, only just different words, or are they actually different?
A twin flame is a soulmate, but not every soulmate is a twin flame.
Oh, okay, well, explain that.
Yeah. What I understand is a soulmate, and there's different levels of it, of course, but really any soul that is journeying with us on this earth to teach us a lesson, to help us grow, is truly a soulmate. So in that sense, we're all soulmates, and you can be a soulmate with somebody that you meet at the grocery store if you learn a lesson from them, and if you've come to that space to learn that lesson. But there is, of course, deeper levels of soulmate, and I sometimes refer to that as soul family, those souls that we have journeyed with over lifetime after lifetime. So there's a soul recognition and family energy to that. It doesn't necessarily have to be our physical family in each lifetime, but they are the souls that we feel closest to and have most remembrance of. And when we come upon a soulmate, we will have a reaction to that soulmate. And sometimes it's a beautiful love and, welcome home, it's so great to see you. Sometimes it's an aversion, because if we have unlearned lessons from somebody and we come into their space, we may not be really happy to see them. But what I can say about a deep family soulmate, a deep soulmate, is it won't be a neutral reaction. It'll either be really happy to see them or really wishing you could walk out that door. But chances are it's not going to be neutral.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about soulmates. I had kind of a more narrow version of that. And I think twin flames is probably going to be more, where
Now that's interesting, because you're giving me exactly the setup to talk about it. I think when soulmates first came out, people thought of that as, their knight in shining armor, or their princess is going to make everything okay, and they're going to feel great, and so we kind of grew and evolved, and all of a sudden people started saying, okay, well, soulmates are really, they come in all different forms, and they started to understand that. Then along comes the name twin flame, and a lot of the world just came and dumped those same thoughts onto twin flame, which is actually, it's not the same as a soulmate, but it is not necessarily romantic either.
Really?
And that is one of the things that has really gotten confusing in our world. So to me, a twin flame is your other half. And so if we think of ourselves as all one in creation, and Creator has expanded itself time and time again till we come to this individual cell that we know as ourselves, and we know we're still part of the whole. So that last part of God that we expanded from before our individual identity would be our twin flame. So it's our closest vibration energetically. And it's really our whole, when we're whole beings. So one carries an alpha energy and one carries an omega energy. But that doesn't mean that one is here on Earth as a male and one is here on Earth as a human. That's an energy that we carry throughout all of our lifetimes, though we might be in different forms. So the twin flame is our gateway back to remembering our oneness, because it is the soul that we are closest to energetically.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that the twin flame may or may not be here in this dimension, but that it can be in another realm. Am I right?
Exactly. We do not need our twin flame here on Earth in order to learn the lessons of the twin flame, which is that gateway, that feeling whole again, remembering we're one. That is the energy that we can most closely remember our oneness with first, and then from this place expand to the bigger understanding of oneness. So our twin flame could be in the spirit world when we're in the physical world. Our twin flame could be around the world and we could never meet. It could be a child, it could be a sister, a brother, a friend. It's not necessarily a romantic partner, and we are not necessarily going to meet them in any given lifetime. Whether we meet them or not, we can still do the energetic work of remembering our wholeness, uniting with that again so that we can expand into our fullness.
Yeah, and that energetic work is so important, and it's the energy that really, to take us back to our earlier conversation, it's that sensation of energy movement in our body that creates our feelings. And so, understanding our feelings is as I understand it now, a primary part of this whole thing. You know, years ago, metaphysics was so heady and so didn't really bring in the feeling part of this, or at least it didn't in what I was studying at that time. But I don't, without that, there's just no way that we can evolve spiritually. I want to talk about one other thing here about, and we only have a couple of minutes left, and I just a quick take on it, and then I would like to find out if we've missed anything that you would like to talk about that you think is especially important. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes here. What's your take on 2012?
I'm starting to call 2012 the tipping point.
Yes, yes.
I see it as anytime we put energy into something, it creates an energy vortex for us, and we're putting energy into it.
Absolutely.
We're going to evolve as a human race, and we are going to move into the energetic realm, whether we go through the easy way of light and love or we go the hard way of war and fighting. Either way, we're all God, so no matter what way we go, we're going to get there.
Right.
I see the world, in my world, things are shifting very drastically. There's awakenings, there's the veil between heaven and earth is just melting away, and we're all being able to access that more and more. I do see the Stargate, but to me the Stargate is our heart that's going inward individually. It's not about some aliens coming in from the sky. It's about us remembering our passageway through our heart, and in that space we now begin to move very gently between the realms. And we do live in the spirit world. We can manifest. There's two extremes, of course. There's the people that are afraid the world's going to explode.
Right.
And then there's the people that are saying, well, we're just not going to need our physical bodies anymore. We're going to manifest everything that we need to, and we're going to be able to teleport and everything. And yes, we can, but it comes from all the work that we said. It doesn't come when 2012 comes.
Right.
The more we work on ourselves, the more we raise our vibrations, the more we can do these things. And like you said, law of attraction, we will start to create instantly what we want. So I see that already happening in the world more and more. And to me, my intention, what I'm projecting onto 2012, is that that's the point when it sort of tips and the masses begin to live and learn from that vibration. It probably won't be anything huge and drastic, but if we look at it from where we were to where we are going, I think we will see a significant. I think it's where we can turn back and say, oh, wow, we really have made some progress.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you on that aspect. I believe that it is definitely a tipping point. Fortunately, I don't think we have to have over 50% of the population seeing what we see and understanding what we understand to reach that tipping point.
Absolutely. Like we said, it's more of a tidal wave or a snowball effect. The momentum keeps picking up. So one person now is holding the energy. It's the work that somebody in another year has to do is going to be so much easier. So we don't need half the population to make that the tipping point.
So unfortunately, we have totally run out of time. I've absolutely enjoyed my conversation with you. We're certainly in alignment one with the other. The people I talk to weekly here are much the same kind of thinking, and it's becoming more and more obvious to me where we're going. Sheila, I really appreciate your coming on the show and spending an hour chatting with me. And I'll look forward to a conversation. Tom will be in contact with you, and we'll see if we can't work something out of getting you on. I just like your message. I think it's positive, and I think it'll be real helpful for a lot of people. So you have a great week, and thanks again for spending time with us.
Thank you. It's been a joy to talk to you as well, and I agree. We're in very much alignment, which is beautiful.
Absolutely. I'll look forward to talking with you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I ran us out of time completely, so I'm going to have to make it quick. Don't forget to accentuate the positive and have a fantastic week.